Commander Sarah Chun had served on the USS Ronald Reagan for 3 years, and in those 3 years, she had earned exactly zero respect from her crew. They followed her orders because they had to, not because they wanted to. Behind her back, they called her the Ghost because she seemed to drift through the carrier's corridors without making an impact, without leaving a mark, without mattering. She was competent enough not to get discharged, but unremarkable enough to be invisible. In the brutal hierarchy of naval service, invisible meant disposable. Before we go further, I need you to think about something. Have you ever worked somewhere where you felt like you didn't belong? Where every day felt like you were proving yourself to people who had already decided you weren't worth their time? Hold that feeling, because what happens to Sarah will show you why sometimes the quietest people are carrying the heaviest secrets. The morning they escorted her off the carrier, Sarah had been expecting it. Captain Morrison's face was unreadable as he stood at the gangway with 2 officers flanking him. No explanation. No ceremony. Just a crisp salute and a gesture toward the transport boat waiting below. Her bunkmates didn't come to say goodbye. The junior officers she had mentored didn't acknowledge her departure. She walked down that gangway carrying a single duffel bag, her service seemingly ending not with honor or recognition, but with silence and confusion. After 3 years of invisible service, she was leaving exactly as she had existed, unnoticed and unexplained. The transport took her to Naval Station Norfolk, where she was led to a nondescript office building far from the main facilities. Still, no one spoke to her. Still, no one explained. Sarah had been in the Navy long enough to recognize the signs. This wasn't a discharge. This was something else entirely. Something that required silence and shadows. She was led through security checkpoints that didn't appear on any official maps, down corridors that seemed to exist outside normal military structure, until finally she stood before a door marked only with a number. Inside, 3 admirals waited. Sarah's heart stopped. In a military career, you might see 1 admiral at a ceremony if you're lucky. 3 admirals in one room meant either you had committed an unthinkable crime or something far stranger was happening. Admiral Catherine Walsh, head of Naval Intelligence, spoke first. Commander Chun, you have been recalled from the USS Ronald Reagan effective immediately. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. Your silence on this matter is not requested. It is required. Sarah's mind raced through every interaction, every decision, every moment of the past 3 years. What had she done? Admiral Walsh continued, her voice measured and serious. 18 months ago, you filed an unusual maintenance report. The carrier's communication systems were experiencing intermittent failures that couldn't be explained by standard diagnostics. Every technician checked and found nothing wrong. You persisted. You logged patterns. You documented microsecond delays that everyone else dismissed as insignificant. Do you remember? Sarah did remember. She had been mocked for it. The chief engineer had called her paranoid. The communications officer had suggested she was inventing problems to seem important. But the patterns had bothered her. Tiny inconsistencies that whispered something was wrong even when all the tests came back clean. She had filed 17 reports over 6 months. All of them had been dismissed. All of them had apparently disappeared into bureaucratic void. Admiral Walsh leaned forward. Commander, those microsecond delays you documented were not system glitches. They were evidence of the most sophisticated foreign intelligence operation we've encountered in 30 years. Someone had compromised our carrier's communication network at the hardware level, so deeply embedded that our standard security protocols couldn't detect it. They were intercepting classified transmissions in real time. Battle plans, submarine locations, nuclear codes. The room fell silent. Sarah felt the weight of those words crushing down on her chest. Admiral Walsh wasn't finished. Your reports were flagged by a single analyst who thought you might be onto something. We launched a covert investigation. It took us 14 months to confirm what you had suspected in 6. We found the breach. We traced it to a foreign operative who had infiltrated our supply chain 3 years ago. Because of your persistence, we stopped a catastrophic security failure. You saved lives, Commander. Possibly thousands of them. Sarah couldn't speak. Her throat had closed. All those months of being dismissed, of being called paranoid and obsessive, of filing reports that seemed to vanish into nothing. They had mattered. They had mattered more than she could have imagined. But Admiral Walsh was still speaking, and her next words made Sarah's world tilt on its axis. We had to remove you from the carrier without explanation because the investigation is ongoing. We couldn't risk anyone knowing what you had discovered, including you, until we had secured every compromised system. But there's something else. The Admiral pulled out a tablet and turned it towards Sarah. On the screen was live footage from the Atlantic Ocean. A massive nuclear submarine was surfacing, water cascading off its black hull. Sarah recognized the class immediately. Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine. One of the most powerful and secretive vessels in the entire naval fleet. That is the USS Wyoming, Admiral Walsh said quietly. Yesterday, its crew learned that their position had been compromised 18 months ago. That enemy forces had known their patrol routes, their communications, everything. They should have been sitting targets. They weren't, because we caught the breach in time. Because of you. What happened next broke every protocol Sarah had ever learned. The submarine, which should have remained submerged and hidden, fully surfaced in broad daylight. Its crew assembled on deck, dozens of sailors in formation, and then, in perfect unison, they saluted. Not toward their own flag, but toward the shore, toward Norfolk, toward the building where Sarah stood watching in disbelief. A nuclear submarine breaking protocol, revealing its position, risking its secrecy, all to honor a commander most of the Navy had never heard of. Admiral Walsh's voice was thick with emotion. They insisted, Commander. When they learned the truth, they insisted on honoring you properly. That submarine carries enough firepower to change the course of history. Every person on board owes their life to your refusal to ignore what others dismissed. Sarah couldn't stop the tears. 3 years of invisible service. 3 years of being the ghost, the paranoid one, the officer no one remembered. And all along she had been protecting something far bigger than she knew. Admiral Walsh stood and extended her hand. Welcome to Naval Intelligence, Commander. We need people who see what others miss. People who persist when everyone tells them to stop. People like you. 6 months later, Sarah would receive the Defense Superior Service Medal in a ceremony attended by no press and witnessed by only a handful of people with the highest clearance. Her citation would be classified. Her achievement would never be publicly known. But in the silent world of naval intelligence, her name became legendary. The commander who saw the invisible threat. The ghost who saved the fleet. If this story moved you, if you've ever been the person who saw what others refused to see, share your experience in the comments below. The world needs people who trust their instincts, even when everyone doubts them. Hit subscribe if you believe that the quietest voices sometimes carry the most important truths. Because in a world that celebrates the loud and the obvious, we need to remember that some heroes work in silence, protecting us from threats we never even knew existed.